Okay, ready.
Good morning, everybody. This is Michelle over at Hesketh Emporium and Headbands for Heroes UK. So today I wanted to get rid of all of the confusion which I've created by changing the pattern that we're using for our headbands. So we have a number of headbands that you can make. We've got the men's or ladies version of this, which some of you are making, thank you. And they are in a stretch fabric, okay? We've got the normal ladies ones, which our pattern is all based around, which has got the elastic open at the bottom and the fabric at the top in 100% cotton. And then the two buttons, which are as close to the join here as you can get them, without having to go through this bulk with your hand needle or your machine needle if you're doing machine sewing on. So that's the one we're going to concentrate on today. You can, however, make the same headband but cover this elastic with a tube of the same fabric. So whatever size you're using of elastic, you just double it plus a seam allowance. So if your elastic is 1 inch wide, as an example, then you would have a 2.5 inch wide strip, and it would be 1.5 times the length of your elastic to allow it to stretch. Remember, that's the important thing. And then the process is exactly the same, except you've got your elastic within a tube of fabric. It takes more fabric and it takes more time, which is why we've gone with this option. It works just as well. So let's get started on making one for you live that you can follow. So first of all, if you look on my screen over here, you will see the pattern and the sizes that you need to cut for your fabrics. So I'll hold you there for a second and then we'll come over here and follow the directions. So I'm a quilter as well as a sewer. So for me, using a rotary cutter and a ruler is second nature. But if it isn't for you, just use a pencil and a ruler and cut with your scissors. Now, the pattern says that you can make them any width really between 4 inches and 6 inches, which is absolutely fine. My sort of standard sizing is 5 inches wide. So I'm going to line up my ruler on the 5-inch line over here on the straight edge. And then I am going to cut my strip of fabric, whatever length it is, to 5 inches long. I then go ahead and cut that to the length which you need, and that is 14.5 inches in length. So I line my ruler up so that I've got it on 14.5 inches, and I cut my headband 14.5 inches long. So that's the one piece you need. And you also need a piece of elastic, whatever that width is. We find anything between 1 centimeter and 2 centimeters is a nice size. Whatever you've got in your stash or whatever you're sent. This is quite stretchy, so it could be a little bit shorter, but whatever we're doing is the elastic needs to be 8.5 inches long. So 8.5 inches, and that's the size you need to start. Plus you need some buttons, and today, because I'm trying to do a quick tutorial, I'm going to do a bit of a cheat and use these knock-in jeans buttons. So we are ready to start. So I take my tube, I take my piece of fabric, iron it if it's really bad, and I fold it in half to make a narrower tube. And I'm going to go over to the sewing machine now, and I'm going to sew all the way down the side of this tube. So come along over here. The width of your stitching or your seam, I generally make it the width of my foot. So it could be the width of your foot, or it could be 1 centimeter or 2 millimeters. If you're a quilter, it could even be 1/4 inch. It is not going to make a massive difference to your headband, the size of your seam. So we simply sew all the way down the open end back tack if you want to. Snip it off, snip your threads as you go. You don't want threads everywhere all the time. Right, I'm now going to turn this tube right side out. I use a cotton ball holder from a surgical place. Somebody got one for me. They're invaluable in my sewing room. And I simply pull this through. However you do that is up to you. I've now got my tube the right way around. I now take it over to the ironing board. I'm not going to do that now. Just for ease, I am going to simply finger and nail press it. So I put the seam in the middle. And then I'm just going to iron that down. Make it nice and neat. Get that flat. And I'm ready for my elastic. So your elastic is now going to go onto the right side. So I place my elastic in the center with the edges lined up, the elastic lined up to the edge of my one side. I fold upwards to cover my elastic from the one side, and I fold downwards to encase the elastic in a pleat or a fold. I take it to the machine, and I now do another 1 centimeter seam allowance to seal that together. And I do this 3 or 4 times. Now, if I'm doing a lot of these, I use the pieced chain technique, or the chain piecing technique, which is where you don't cut off your thread every time. You just keep making them. You put through 20, 30, 40 headbands on one side at a time, and then you go back to the first one and you repeat the process. So I've now sealed in my elastic on the one side. I now turn it round to get access to the other side. I take my elastic, making sure I don't twist it, and I pull it across so that its edge joins the edge of your headband. Now, if you're going to do this and twist it round, last time we folded up and then we folded down. The problem with that is when you look at it and you compare the two sides, this one's going to be up, this one's going to be down. So what I have to do is when I do the second side, I do it in reverse. So I do down over the elastic first, then I fold up over the elastic. And I'll show you when I've sewn that it's now the same. 1 centimeter seam allowance, or the width of your foot, backward and forward a few times to make sure your elastic is not going to come undone. Snip off all your threads. Now, when you look at your tube like this, you can see that my folds are opposite to each other if they're like this. But if I had to open the headband this way, they're now both the right way up. If you have got strings, I trim off a little bit. I trim off down to just over 1/2 centimeter. What you don't want is this little bit to stick out of your headband. I'll show you that now. So I've done my trimming. It's now really simple to put your nail or your thumb into that hole and flip it over. And then using the elastic, you can pull it through. That's the one side. And on the other side, put your finger into the hole and flip it over and pull your elastic to pull your tube round. So now your headband is complete. You can see here now that these two folds that have now covered your raw edges. So you cannot see the raw edges anymore. If you're making this for a person who isn't needing buttons on, you're now ready. You can gift that to somebody. You can make them for kids at school, for yourself, whatever. The nice thing is with these headbands as well, if you make them this size, they're great as just a headband. If you make them slightly wider, then they are worn lower on the forehead, and that allows the headband to be worn to keep as a sweatband almost along the brow. So if they're there, then the mask, the shield will sit along that and help absorb sweat, which is nice and comfortable. So we have a finished headband. Now we're going to take it over to the table, and I'm going to show you the alignment of the buttons. So for this, I need an awl and a hammer. So if you do have any of these at home, feel free to use them. I use them. And one of my ladies who's got very bad arthritis in her hands uses these jeans buttons because it helps her. So I am going to find the end of my seam, so you can see the bulk underneath there where the stitching of all of those layers is. And you want to avoid that, whether you're sewing it on a machine, whether you're sewing it on by hand or putting in these. You just want to avoid that. So I'm going to just go to that area just below that, find the center of your headband. Sorry, I'm just going to flip that around, and I'm going to put an awl hole there. Now you don't need to do this if you're doing buttons. Clearly you just sew your button on, and make sure your buttons are well sewn on. So I'm just going to make a hole there for my pin to go through. My pin goes onto the back of my headband so that my button is on the front. I have put these on wrong in the past, and they are quite difficult to get out. So now I have that in position. I use my trusty hammer, and this is my sewing room hammer, by the way. It's not stolen from somebody else. I give it 1 or 2 firm thumps, and that is it. My button is now in position. And you can pretend I've done the other one on the other side, and my headband is now ready for one of our heroes. So everybody, thank you for watching. I hope that's clarified for you the difference we are now making with our buttons. If they're too high up, what happens is the face mask pulls too high, and it will stretch that elastic and therefore pull the face mask onto the face, which may not be a problem for us casual wearers, but for somebody who has to wear this all shift, that is a big deal. So we want our workers to be as comfortable as possible. And so let's put our buttons on as close to that elastic on this particular pattern as we can. If it's not there, then the idea is that that button really is in line almost with the ear, so that when I put my mask on, it's going over the button instead of over the back of my ear. Okay, thank you for watching, and have a fabulous day. Thank you for all you're doing for our Headbands for Heroes campaign, and for every single one of our heroes out there. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.